So we're just opening up TurningPoint right now, and once TurningPoint opens, we'll open up our intermediate user and advanced user presentation here. And like I said, guys, each one of these topics will be standalone. We're not going to need one to do the other. So the first thing that we're going to cover today is something called comparative links. Comparative links will allow you to go ahead and take a pre- and a post-analysis question within your presentation and link those together to see a result on a subsequent third slide. So let's say right in the beginning of your presentation, you want to ask your students kind of a pre-analysis question. You want to do a knowledge check to see how much information they currently have about the topic you're going to cover. So maybe right in the beginning of your presentation, you would put in a slide such as this. How familiar are you with TurningPoint? You would go through your entire presentation, and then at the very end of it, or towards the end, you would come to the question the second time. Well, this would be the pre and the post analysis right here. Through a comparative link, you're going to be able to see the difference of how those students answered it the first time compared to the second. Now, to set up a comparative link, you first of all need to build these question slides right into the presentation. So there's nothing special about these two slides. I just went to my Insert Slide tab, I clicked on Vertical, I typed out my question, and I typed out my answer choices. Now, do recognize that my slides are back to back. But if this was a practical scenario where I had students in front of me, I would have many slides in between these, both PowerPoint and TurningPoint. But for our training purposes, I do have these back to back. Now, after I have them in the presentation, to link them together, I'm going to come back up here to my Insert Slide tab, and when I click on Insert Slide, I'm going to locate Comparative Links, the second option from the bottom. When I select Comparative Links, a little menu that pops up, and it's just going to simply ask me for my first slide and my second slide. So in this case, our first slide is number 8, and our second slide is number 9. As soon as I press OK, it's going to build that subsequent third slide, which when I run this presentation, will show me the difference of how the audience answered the question the two separate times. So once again, comparative links will allow us to examine the difference between how the audience answered two separate questions. Now, these questions are going to be similar. I do want you to notice the question at the top of this link slide. How familiar are you with TurningPoint Part 2? It takes on how the question was stated the second time. So technically, you could link together two non-related slides, but that would be pointless. You wouldn't get any relevant information on here. So make sure that the questions are at least asking the same things, and that the answer choices are the same. Answer choices should be uniform, and the questions should pretty much be asking the same exact thing. Are there any questions, first of all, in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here in setting up these comparative links?
No, I'm good.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and run these through on simulated data, and we'll also take a look at where the comparative link report is located. So as we're running through the presentation, this, of course, would be my pre-analysis question. Get the results as I normally would. Now, keep in mind that I would normally go through a lot of other slides before I come to the question again, but this would be my post-analysis, shut down my polling, get my results. And now this time when I advance, I will advance to where I have the link slide to be able to see the difference of how the audience answered the two separate times. Okay, so the comparative links will show you that automatically when you arrive on this slide. Now keep in mind that this link slide needs to come after the second time you ask the question. Now you could move it later in the presentation and it's still going to work. Okay, but just make sure you do not move it before the second time you ask the question. Otherwise, this is going to become disabled because it has no information to link together. Now, when your presentation is 100% complete, we all know that we should save our results to the save session, and then either immediately or at a later time, we'll generate our reports. So when we get into our reporting screen, the very last folder, which reads Other Reports, will contain a comparative link report. So when I open this up, the comparative link report will be the second option down. So I'm going to check mark this box, click on Generate Reports, and now it's going to give me that segmented horizontal charts in an Excel format. So from here I can go ahead and print it off, email it, save it to whatever I need to do, because of course it's nothing but Excel. So that's our comparative links, where we can go ahead and link together the pre and post analysis question. Before we move on to the next topic, are there any other questions on the comparative links?
No.
Now remember, each one of these topics are independent, so with this priority ranking, it's basically nothing to do with comparative links. Now, just as my slide reads, priority ranking allows your participants to rank items based on importance. let's say you're running a presentation and you come upon a question and you want your students to go ahead and rank this question. You want them to go ahead and rank the answer choices based on some type of importance. So this would be the priority ranking. So they're answering a question multiple times, and each subsequent answer choice is worth a little bit less than their previous. Now the priority ranking slide is something you're actually going to build from scratch within the Insert Slide tab. So if I go to Insert Slide, come down to the fourth option from the bottom, this is where I'm going to find priority ranking. Now when I click on the priority ranking, I immediately have a menu that pops up which asks me how many responses I want to allow per participant. Now I can have up to 10. Well, I don't recommend that you go any higher than probably 4. 5 is even pushing it. Because when you run this live in a presentation and the students start ranking things, my experience is that the students are going to forget what they put for number 2 and number 3 by the time they get to number 4 and number 5. And so this can get kind of confusing if they're not having some way of tracking what they've already answered. So my recommendation is 3, exactly what the default is set to. So now that we're set to 3, we're going to press OK. This is going to build it right into the presentation. Now notice, this looks like any other question and answer slide. This one's different because I went to priority ranking to put it in. In my case, the students will be able to answer this question 3 times. And each one of those answer choices will be worth a little bit less than their previous. Now I've already built a priority ranking slide in advance. My slide reads, choose your favorite vacation spot, pick your top 3 in order. Also, another very important thing that I want to note. It's important to go ahead and either verbally tell your students how this slide works in terms that the order does matter, and also you're allowed to pick more than one, or you're going to go ahead and put it in the text within the slide. My recommendation is you verbally tell them that, hey, you're going to pick 3, and it's not going to be a random selection. You're going to pick your most important first, and then your third important number 3. Important to let them know how this slide works, because otherwise you're going to get invalid information. Now what I'd like to do is go ahead and run this on the simulated mode, take a look at the outcome. Okay, so of course when we arrive in this slide, the students are going to answer it 3 times. Now I do want you guys to recognize how in the upper right hand corner it reads 50 responses. That means there's 50 students in this simulated class. But when I shut down my polling and I change this over to whole numbers, Costa Maya seems to be the grand winner here with 90. I have Jamaica with 20, Aruba 40, Barcelona 50. Paris has just got a horrible color right there, so who knows what that has. But obviously, though, you can see it's way more than 50. But keep in mind, though, this is going to take those different weights and add them together. So this is a perfect time to talk about how it's weighting these questions. The first response that a student would give is worth 10 points. The second response is worth 9. The third response was worth 8. And they're going to have all the way down to just 1 single point if I allow them to answer this question 10 times. Now, of course, we can see that all my numbers are in powers of 10. The only reason it's popping up like that is because I am on simulated data. But if I have a live audience in front of me, it might read something as 21, 43, 57, 65, so on and so forth. I'm probably not going to have all these whole numbers in powers of 10. So once again, the weighting is separated by 10, 9, 8 all the way down to 1, and it's just adding all those whole numbers together to give us the final results. Now these weights can be adjusted within your TurningPoint settings, which I will show you. But before we go into the settings to talk about adjusting those weights, are there any questions ahead of time in terms of just setting this up and facilitating this during the presentation?
No.
Okay. Now, of course, if we are going to go ahead and change the weights, these are something that we would need to do before we ever run the presentation. Okay, so once we have the priority ranking slide in there, if I come to Tools, down to Settings, you're going to notice on the left-hand side how it's listing every single one of my TurningPoint slides that are in the presentation. Now, slide number 13 was the priority ranking one, so I'm going to left-click on it, which will highlight it. And now using the menu on the right-hand side, I'm going to scroll down until I come to my third category, which is going to read priority ranking. Now remember, by default, the first response is worth 10 points, and the last response, if it's 10, is worth 1 point. But in my case, my students can only have 3 responses. But what if I wanted that second response to be worth only half as much as the first? Well, I can go ahead and click on the 9 and change it to 5. If I want that third response to be worth a little bit less than the second, then maybe I want to go ahead and put it at 2. Okay, so this is an opportunity where we can go ahead and adjust those weights So we do have a little bit more discrepancy between the first, second, and third response, because 10, 9, 8 is pretty close together, and you may not be getting the type of outcome that you may be desiring because they are so close together. But when you go ahead and you change the weights ahead of time, you're going to get a little bit more distance between these, which will give you greater discrepancy, so maybe you'll get the results that you possibly could be looking for there. Now, do keep in mind this is something you would do ahead of time. You would not do it after you run the slide as I showed you. Any questions in terms of adjusting these weights if you want to?